Team, we are back working on the boat. Like I mentioned at the end of the last video, I had to go back into work for a couple of weeks, kind of breaking up my large leave period. Me and a couple of the other lads planned and stood up some advanced, or like as we call it, like enhanced shooting packages at work. So like if you've got to break up a big stint of leave, going and banging it in on the range for a couple of weeks, getting a few thousand rounds down, all on the King's dime is definitely the way to do it. So today's Tuesday of my first week back on leave. 2 weeks standing on the range pretty well cooked me, so I'm feeling a bit sick at the moment. And I didn't get much work done yesterday because for those of you that don't know me personally, I live in a place called Townsville, and I love living here. Like, it's a great place. It's right on the reef. It's picturesque as fuck. It's tropical. It's nice. Hot as hell, but it's beautiful as long as we get a good wet season, which we have been lately. But they did a rating a couple of years ago, I think back in like 2019, and Townsville is like the second in the world city-wise per capita for non-violent crimes. So heaps of breaking and enter, heaps of grand theft auto, all that kind of shit. And the suburb or the estate that I live in is going through like a massive amount of crime at the moment, or attempted break-ins. Like, I don't know how successful they've really been. I know one car got stolen the other night, but they've been hitting the estate every night for the past 4 nights. So I had to go on a little bit of a side quest yesterday because they tried to do our house on Sunday. We woke up on Monday morning, and when my wife was on her way to work, she noticed that they had cut a hole in the fly screen. So I'll show you actually. So they'd fingered that little hole there. And they do it just to manipulate the locks, obviously, to get in. They didn't get in because I had all the deadlocks and shit on the timber door. But I'm hesitant to key lock that, because I don't want there to be a fire or any other emergency inside the house and the kids have to get out, you know, and the key not be available. So I don't key lock it, but I did make up yesterday these Perspex guards so that they can't reach around and finger fuck the locks. Now, not the 100% solution obviously, but hopefully it just acts as another deterrent. But today, we've cracked back into a little bit of work, and I saved you having to watch me underneath the boat cover, just using the multi-tool to rip those other 2 stringers out. But as you can see, I got those 2 main ones out, and I've left the little rib, that short stringer, in the middle. So I think like a combination of that middle one and the 2 side ones that I've glassed in keeps that good line from transom to bow of shape. So like, the rollers don't have any influence, the dodgy jack setup that I have doesn't have any influence in the actual shape of the keel. It'll keep that keel line nice and sweet. So I've cut all them out. I know I've been over it before, but just using that multi-tool, and yeah, those carbide teeth, they're still going strong. Like, that blade has almost cut out everything in the boat in regards to the stringers and the bulkheads and shit like that, and it's still going wicked strong. So yeah, the only problem is with time kind of tacking on is, besides the massive crime rate in Townsville, it's also really fucking hot, and it's starting to get hot again. A couple of days into spring, and it probably already starting to feel like a Victorian summer. So pretty cooked. Managed to get all that shit out. I'll probably start sanding it tomorrow morning when it's a little bit cooler, rather than getting in there now, because it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon now, so it's hot as. So yeah, tomorrow I'll get the sander, bring all that back, clean up all the front there where it all ties in, get everything ready for glass, which will allow me to accurately measure the thermalite when I need to cut the new stringers. So yeah, that's kind of the plan. Now, I'll show you the stringers in a sec. Okay, so it's pretty bright out here, so hopefully it adjusts, but I've just got the old stringers laying down on the ground. Obviously they're not full length because I had cut out the floor to do the transom, but once again you can see that single layer of woven on the outboard side of the stringer, not really doing much structurally or waterproofing wise. What you can see though is a real thick layup of glass on the stringer itself. Probably pretty hard for me to turn over. No, not too bad. So if you have a look in here, this would have been the inside wall where the fuel tank was, and it had a combination of the actual layup of glass on the stringer, which I don't know if you can differentiate between the two, an actual layup of glass on the stringer, which was a really thick, strong, you know, probably about 4mm thick layup. And then it had another layup which was separate, which was tied into the floor on the top and the floor in which the fuel tank sat on. So that's what really gave these their strength and their weight. Like, they are pretty heavy, probably weigh about 25 kilos each. So yeah, thick layer of glass in there. Probably a little bit of overkill, but good nonetheless. Only overkill if the outboard side had been done correctly. But because this is such a shit job, that's probably actually a really good layout. So with the stringers that you just saw, I'll use them as rough guides for shape before I took them out of the boat, I measured the length to the transom. So I have a good idea of that size or that distance that I'm gonna have to cut out, that dimension. I'll utilize those timber props that I made, those 3 2x4 boards that will guide where the stringers are going to go. Again, same process as the outside ones really, but yeah, that'll probably happen tomorrow or tomorrow afternoon, Thursday morning. I'll have them all ready. I am waiting, although I've got a fair bit of supplies still here, I'm waiting on more to rock up from New South Wales, which probably come on Monday, hopefully come on Monday. So the idea would be that I can get these stringers in this week, I can get them like tabbed in, I can get the putty, like the gap underneath them filled and filleted properly, so that when the supplies rock up on Monday, it's just a case of I'm ready to go to fully glass them in, so get all the other bullshit done, so that I'm ready to go as soon as supplies rock up. And I think that's pretty achievable, pending after I fill and putty them and fillet them and get them prepped and all that, pending how much resin I've got left, I might start working on the back of the transom this weekend as well, because I've probably got enough supplies to get that done. So I might work on the back of the transom, filling in these spots here, tidying up all the holes that are not needed anymore, and getting those swim platforms or duck boards put on. Yeah, so that's the plan for this week, and I think it's pretty achievable. Hey, so what you would have seen outside was I was just surface prepping the swim platforms, rounding over the edges, because today I'm going to do the underside of them, or at least this morning I'll do the underside, and maybe this afternoon I'll get a layer of chop down on the top so that tomorrow I can put them on the boat. Basically where we're at with everything is I'm back on leave now. It's Thursday of my first week back on leave, and not a great deal has been going on for a couple of reasons. Life continues to kind of go on. What I did do, which was the original plan for this week, was I started, obviously got the other two stringers out and I started sanding them down. The problem is when I do this at home, I get inside there with the vacuum, fully like respirator and PPE and all that good shit, and I do it inside so that all the excess dust that the vacuum doesn't pick up doesn't go onto like the neighbour's yard and houses and shit like that. And obviously you don't want like just the dust floating around the neighbourhood, and doing it in the boat cover prevents pretty much all of it from getting out the back. But it is uncomfy, it's hot, it's shit. Even with the respirator and the PPE, it sucks. So I'm going to change my timeline. I'm going to go to work on the weekend to finish all the sanding and surface prep for the glass of those two stringers. And this week, or the rest of this week, so tomorrow, Friday, and probably Saturday morning, I'll focus on the rear of the transom and getting the swim platforms on, and the rear of the transom to a point that it's ready to start fairing, and I'll order some flow coat with some additives to turn into fairing compound so that I can start that process, because it is going to be a bit of a process to get this to a point that it looks smooth enough that I can put the surface finish that I want on. I don't think I'll be able to get it perfect, but I'm not going for that gel coat perfect shiny finish. I'm actually tossing up wrapped aligning the outside just for a bit of durability. So that'll hide a lot of the errors in any surface finish that I attempt. So that's the plan. Scrap this shit, do that on the weekend at work, because I don't have to worry so much about the excess dust in affecting the neighbours and stuff like that. And like I said, like before anyone gets concerned, the boat cover and the vacuum do a job keeping about 99% of the dust inside the boat. But the 99% of the dust is all over me, which is fucking annoying. And even with the PPE, I just don't like it. So switch fires, get this shit sorted over the weekend, and get on with a bit of fiberglassing today. So what I'm going to do next, just back inside this shit fight of a garage, is I'll acetone wash the boards, both sides for now, just to make them a clean surface. I'll acetone them. That's them surface prep. Then I'll cut the glass, get it to the shape I want, because I want it to go on the underside. So obviously coat the whole surface and go over this radius that I just sanded in, and overhang the side. That'll give me that two plane of structure. And then when it's cured off, I'll just trim off the excess and just give it a quick re-prep, so that when I flip it over, I can do the exact same. So there'll be 2 layers of chop on the underside, and then 2 layers of chop probably on the top side, if not just one, which means there'll be 3 or 4 layers on the side, which will give it that strength in flexion. And then when I tie it into the transom, there'll be another lot of multiple layers from transom onto top side, and at least the same amount of layers from transom to bottom side as well, and that'll be the tie-in. So I'm obviously going to rely on a fair bit of strength just in the laminating process, but just off how much pressure or strength or pulling power or whatever you want to call it, I had to use to pull up some of those loose bits of poorly laminated woven inside the boat. So that stuff that we identified wasn't adhered properly to the hull. It took some fucking strength to rip that up. So I'm pretty confident that a good lamination or a good adhesion on the back of the transom and the boards will be enough tensile strength as well as the dowels giving us the strength in that shear plane, that these will be strong enough to stand on as like a 90 kilo bloke. If it proves that they're too long and that there's too much leverage when you're putting your entire weight, say, on the very end, then after the fact we can always come back and shorten them so that they're a little bit more, they're a little bit less less of a long lever if you put all your weight on the furthest most reach of it, if that makes sense. Try and explain that a little bit better when they're on. But yep, so acetone wash, get ready to go with a couple of layers of chop. Oh, so as a point of living in tropical North Queensland, it's what, day 12 of spring, and GoPros are already overheating while they're in the shade of a garage. So the footage would have cut out then because the camera was getting a little bit hot and it turned itself off. But I've got both of the 2 layers of that 600 gram chop, so quite a heavy chop, on the underside of the duckboard swim platform, whatever it is we're calling them, and it turned out mint. I mean, just, I don't know if as I'm kind of cracking on with it, I'm getting a little bit better at the process, or maybe I'm just finding out the things that don't work, so instinctively I'm just trying not to do certain things, or I'm figuring out, you know, things that do work. But yeah, she's come up an absolute treat. No major air bubbles at all. You might be able to see these really tiny little pinprick sort of air bubbles. I kind of put that down to the porosity of the thermalite. It's not actually like a smooth, fully finished foam surface. There's pits in it, and and all that kind of shit. So you try to avoid that stuff by really drenching that surface before you lay the glass on. But if you've ever tried to do like a epoxy fill of timber or anything like that, you know that the porosity in the cracks that you might be filling, or the holes in the case of the thermalite, that's like a cave system of porosity throughout the entire material. So you lay down as thick as you can to make sure you fill up the ones that can be filled, but you're going to get tiny little air bubbles escaping regardless. The important thing that you don't want to see is really big air bubbles. So they would look something like what I'm pointing at right here, except that that's not an air bubble. That was a little bit of discoloration either on the thermalite or on the what's called the glass mat, that is just kind of showing through like that, because I've rolled the absolute shit out of that. But it appeared basically as soon as I started filling it with glass, or filling it with resin, sorry. So yeah, I'm not concerned that that is an air bubble. I think that's just a bit of discoloration, but it has come together sweet. I obviously radiused the curve enough that the glass, even this real heavy chop, it laid down perfect. And what I'm kind of discovering is, and I'll try to, you know, start a bit earlier tomorrow when I'm doing the other side so that I can show you guys a little bit more accurately the process. But what I'm doing is I'm saturating the flat surface, and with whenever I roll the heavy amount of resin close to an edge, I just quickly shoot over the edge with the roller, and I don't focus on the edge, but I let that resin soak into the glass fibers and turn them soft. Finish off the flat surface, and by the time that's done, the resin has fully impregnated into at least the corner portion of that glass mat, and it just folds over like perfect. And you'll also find that because you don't focus on the sides, it allows the resin underneath that's already on that other surface to tack up a little bit. So a mixture of the really soft cloth on the corner and the tackiness of the resin underneath, it laid down really well. And I say this, and then when I flip it over to do the other side, it'll probably turn out like absolute shit. But I think I've kind of got it down. So yeah, job now is let it dry really. Obviously there's these overhangs, these dags. Once it's cured off, I'll just take the multi-tool and trim all them off. I could go through with a razor blade now while it's still pretty tacky and cut them, but I'm gonna have to do a little bit more precise kind of sand work to make sure that the radius on the other side is smooth once I take that excess off, so that the next layer lays down really quick as well. So yeah, let it dry. Probably tomorrow morning, zip off all the overhang and give it a quick sand. And I'm on a couple of frames of mind. Two options is have the underside done, trimmed off and neat, put it onto the boat, and then just do the top surface while it's on the back of the transom, or do both sides off the boat, have them fully encased, ready to go. That way the first thing I do when they're back on the transom, or when they're initially on the transom, is the tie-in layers. And that might be the go, because it'll limit any excess shit or messiness or whatever that I would then have to clean off the transom before I can actually lay down the full layers. So yeah, that's where we're at. Right, so it is the same Arvo. I just picked up the eldest from school and she's chilling inside, and this is actually cured off enough where I'm happy to nip the dags off, so I'll do that now. And one thing just to kind of mention is, one of the biggest things that I'm finding going through this whole process is the expendable stores, like your expense stores, really start to like rack up in cost, and there's ways kind of around it. One of them is to keep like a bucket with a bit of acetone in it so your rollers don't seize up with cured resin, so you can reuse your rollers. Though rollers aren't that expensive, but containers are. Like, I found these today. Well, I've seen them at Bunnings, you know, previously, but I decided to try these today. They're $3 each, and they're pretty flexible. And this is one of the ones that I used earlier today, and once that resin cures off, especially the unwaxed stuff, it goes to like this, not quite rubbery, but certainly not like flaky solid mass, and it really peels easily out of these. So like that bucket there, or tray rather, roller tray, I'll be able to use that again. So just a tick in the box for saving a bit of coin on expense stores. Right, so that's both of the layers done on the top of both of the platforms. If you are messing around with this and you are an absolute novice like myself, one thing to really pay attention to is your mix ratio of your catalyst. I'm pretty sure I get it right most of the time, but you're only meant to mix it at 2%. That's like the baseline. On hotter days, you can mix it at slightly lower than that. Colder days, slightly higher than that. Where I think I'm coming unstuck is, for example, say I put 520 grams of resin into the pot. I should just put 10 grams of the catalyst in and just be happy that that's close enough to the 2%. I live in Townsville. It's a pretty warm day today. Making it a slightly colder mix won't really affect it going off, so that would be all fine. But what I end up doing is like I'll put 11 grams of catalyst in just to compensate for the little bit of extra resin, and I don't think I need to. And I think I ended up going a little bit over the 2% on this platform here, because the work time was noticeably less. And some negatives of that is that pull-up that you would have seen towards the end of the working life of the first one. That happens a lot sooner, so you get less working time to fin roll all the air bubbles out. And then the other thing is, I don't know if you can see these little inclusions here, little like jelly-like inclusions. These ones specifically are probably more so the lint from the roller, because I use a different type of roller on this one, but pains in the arse nonetheless. And that's a side effect that you can get, not just off lint from your roller, but if you don't clean out your bucket in between mixes, and the stuff that's left in the bucket goes off slightly quicker, or it goes off while you're mixing the other one, and you get these little like jelly-like nodules. Not the case in this example, but yeah, that's something that can happen. Quick point to note, that's the very porous bit that I filled with the skim coat, and you can still see the discoloration, and certainly the skim coat didn't really do much in the ways of all the little pinprick style bubbles. If you've ever tried to bog a hole in the wall or do something specifically like this, you kind of know that when you skim coat a cavity, the air that's in the cavity always wants to push out anyway, so it's really hard to get 100% like good fill coverage, especially if you're just doing one skim coat. So proof of concept, probably won't bother doing skim coats unless there's a really big piece of like big gouge of porosity where you can see exposed glass like there. But just for the sake of those little pinpricks, probably won't worry about it. I think the fin roller gets it good to the point of where it needs to be. So I'll probably just leave it at that. All right, so next day you would have seen I've gotten rid of all the dags, made sure that that radius is still like an acceptable kind of radius to take the other side. I've settled on just doing one layer of chop on this top side. I think I just went a bit overkill with bothering to do two, noting that there's going to be multiple layers of transom tie-in anyway. Doesn't matter that it's a little bit thicker on the bottom, it'll be fine. What I have done is acetone rubbed everything, and it's cool to see that, like, yesterday it was cured off to the touch, but with a quick acetone wash it goes back to tacky, and that's just one of the advantages of using unwaxed, is just a quick acetone wash and most of the time it'll get it back to tack. But sometimes you do have to scuff it up, and I thought I was going to have to scuff up the back of the transom, the exposed bits of thermalite. But like, if you've been following the videos along, that was nearly 2 months ago now that we put that layer of chop on with unwaxed on the rear, and the acetone wash brought its tackiness back up as well. So yeah, that's cool. I am going to go mix up a thickened resin mixture, that like peanut butter putty shit, and just do like a little bit of patchwork on the holes that I don't need anymore. And while I've got a bit of leftover, I'm just going to do a proof of concept, because I spoke about yesterday the little pinholes because of the porosity. I'm just going to do a skim coat over the thermalite and see if that prevents those little pinholes. And you might be able to see like some even bigger bits of porosity here that can probably have the potential to turn into big air bubbles. I don't think, like, for economy of effort, doing it on a huge sheet like the transom may be worth it because of just how fucking big it is. But this is just like a nice couple of small pieces of thermalite to try it on, and just see if it works. And you know, if it does, anytime I come across a bit of thermo that does have a big bit of porosity and exposed glass like here, it's I can prove if this is if it's a concept worth doing, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm going to mix that up and start puttying. Right, so that's both of the layers done on the top of both of the platforms. If you are messing around with this and you are an absolute novice like myself, one thing to really pay attention to is your mix ratio of your catalyst. I'm pretty sure I get it right most of the time, but you're only meant to mix it at 2%. That's like the baseline. On hotter days, you can mix it at slightly lower than that. Colder days, slightly higher than that. Where I think I'm coming unstuck is, for example, say I put 520 grams of resin into the pot. I should just put 10 grams of the catalyst in and just be happy that that's close enough to the 2%. I live in Townsville. It's a pretty warm day today. Making it a slightly colder mix won't really affect it going off. So that would be all fine. But what I end up doing is, like, I'll put 11 grams of catalyst in just to compensate for the little bit of extra resin, and I don't think I need to. And I think I ended up going a little bit over the 2% on this platform here, because the work time was noticeably less. And some negatives of that is that pull-up that you would have seen towards the end of the working life of the first one. That happens a lot sooner, so you get less working time to fin roll all the air bubbles out. And then the other thing is, I don't know if you can see these little inclusions here, little like jelly-like inclusions. These ones specifically are probably more so the lint from the roller, because I used a different type of roller on this one, but pains in the arse nonetheless. And that's a side effect that you can get, not just off lint from your roller, but if you don't clean out your bucket in between mixes, and the stuff that's left in the bucket goes off slightly quicker, or it goes off while you're mixing the other one, and you get these little like jelly-like nodules. Not the case in this example, but yeah, that's something that can happen. Quick point to note, that's the very porous bit that I filled with the skim coat, and you can still see the discoloration, and certainly the skim coat didn't really do much in the ways of all the little pinprick style bubbles. If you've ever tried to bog a hole in the wall or do something specifically like this, you kind of know that when you skim coat a cavity, the air that's in the cavity always wants to push out anyway, so it's really hard to get 100% like good fill coverage, especially if you just do a one skim coat. So proof of concept, probably won't bother doing skim coats unless there's a really big piece of like big gouge of porosity where you can see exposed glass like there. But just for the sake of those little pinpricks, probably won't worry about it. I think the fin roller gets it good to the point of where it needs to be, so I'll probably just leave it at that. Cool, so just off camera, I put a piece of that 600 gram chop in these voids here, just to try and build up that surface. I am going to have to let that cure off a little bit and then reassess where I need to go from here. I think there's going to be a need to chuck another skim coat of fill just along this area on this side, just to kind of bring it flush again before I, put another layer. And then I might do that and just throw another 600 gram layer of chop just in there to build it up. But once it's cured off, I'll throw the steel rule over it and just kind of get an assessment. And on this side, there's definitely going to be a need for a little bit of fill in there, and I reckon another layer of chop on this side. The annoying thing is that on the inside here, it obviously needs more fill, but out on the edge here, it's completely fine, and then up here, it's pretty much good as well. So it's really just to help me do what I deem as an acceptable level of fairing later. If I were to leave it like that, there's huge risk of air bubbles once I start laminating proper resin over the top and all of that good stuff. So I do want to get rid of any depressions, but in regards to like how 100% smooth and faired it is, really not necessary, noting that I'm probably just going to wrap to coat the outside of the boat anyway. which will hide most of the imperfections. So voids that can cause air bubbles, which can cause weak spots for cracking, that's what I want to get rid of now. Hey, so this morning I've chucked a second layer of chop in those voids, and they went on really well, no issues there. I think that's just going to give me a closer to the correct overall surface, but there's still going to need to be a skim coat, so I'll let this cure off and then I'll be skim coating. If you can kind of see this shadowy part here, that's just a bit of a void where for some reason this portion of the skin was a lot thicker than other portions like down here. So I'm relatively level all across with that second layer, but then just these corners here. So I'll just do a quick skim coat of that thickened stuff once that cures off. And I'll do a second skim coat of any of the filled holes that might have sunk in a little bit as they cured, and this portion here. And that'll have everything a flat surface, ready to chuck the boards on. So yeah, in regards to the boards, all I did this morning was I got the multi-tool, nicked all the dags off. It's really good because when you just got a couple of layers of glass, it just cuts through it like butter, and it's really controlled. And then I just took the orbital with some 40 grit, and I just got rid of any of the bits that that the dags overlapped and created like a cavity underneath and turned it into nice smooth radius again. And so those are now ready to chuck up on the transom, tie them up. I'll do a big dry fit just to make sure I can easily acquire the angle that I want them on and check the angle and all that kind of stuff. And then yeah, maybe get them on today, depending on like all the curing times and, you know, my availability throughout the day and all that good stuff. But yeah, cracking on.
Yo.
Are you a YouTuber?
No.
Are you on YouTube?
No. Not at the moment.
Maybe like in other episodes.
I can't hear you, I got headphones on. Nice.
Alright, so you would have seen a little bit over this side here. Got that thickened stuff in there. Bit hard to see, but it's more or less flattened out. We'll probably compress a little bit as it cures. That's alright, it'll still be a flat enough surface to lay the glass over. Point to note, the more of this I do now, because this is going to become a structural piece, the thicker I lay that down now for the sake of getting it flat, although it'll create a flatter surface, the more it will be just resin, and resin by itself isn't particularly strong. So I'll leave it there at about 1 mil thickness, or maybe 1.5 mil in the deepest spots, and only really coming out over, you know, about 25-30 mil, so about 1 inch or so all the way around. That way the structure that holds the swim platforms on, or the boarding platforms, duck boards, whatever, will still be structurally sound, and then I can mess around with filling it to bring it as flat on the very last outside surface, which is non-structural. So got that coat in there, good flat surface. Got another coat on the middle, and then over all of the bloody old holes on the transom, so that's all good. And then same deal here. For whatever reason, it's these corners that are the thicker parts, so got that all laid in, good to go. But for now, like, I'm going to call it there for today and for this video. Point to note, if you ever find yourself doing a project like this, everything takes a little bit longer than you thought it was going to. So for this, I'm going to have to let it fully cure off so that I can trim off all the dags, round off all the corners, get it prepped, the surface prepped for the glass. So that might be achievable by this afternoon, but that plus getting the platforms on and glassed in is not achievable, just looking at kind of timeline and efficient use of time. So what I'll do instead is call it there for this one, and tomorrow put in a big day at work, getting up to hopefully about 90% of the demo done of the inside, and up into that little forward cabin area, get all that shit cut out, get it to a point where hopefully there's only maybe 1 or 2 weekends left doing demo stuff. So yeah, what I'm going to do now, let this cure off, clean the absolute shit fight that is my work area. That's another point to note if you ever find yourself doing this kind of shit. Be more organised than I am, because I can never find anything, and every job just creates a huge mess, and I should spend that bit of time cleaning up after every job, but I don't. So I'm going to do that now, that way I can take a bit of extra trash to the big skips at work tomorrow, clean up the garage, free the ball mower out so I can do the lawns, and yeah, I'll catch yous hopefully next week with another one. Cheers.